Could you say more about the collapse of Israel? What do you mean by that? And can you speak about free speech, quote unquote, or lack thereof in Israel on the topic of Palestine? Thank you.
If I also can broadcast my last book that just came out, which is called Lobbying for Zionism on Both Sides of the Atlantic, in which I try to show that after 100 years of successful lobbying for Zionism, which explains the position of Keith Starmer, the position of any prime minister in Britain or any president in the United States, I can see the waning of the power of this lobbying. It's difficult for people to see it because the collapse of the power of that lobby will take time. But I feel that as an academic, by the way, not just as an activist, that I can really detect its ineffectiveness compared to the past because I'm doing an historical search on it. This is only one indicator to the collapse of Israel. Now, let me clearly say, I see the beginning of the collapse. And a beginning of a collapse can be a long period, unfortunately, and a very terrible period in many ways, because the regime or the structure that is collapsing is trying all it can to hold it together with the most brutal and ruthless and uninhibited way of doing that. And we can see it. We saw it, by the way, in the last days of the regime of South Africa. It was a similar case. So it's not a process for tomorrow or the day after, but I can see the beginning. The indicators of, I will do it very quickly, the implosion of the Israeli society from within, and that connects to the freedom of speech. There is no freedom of speech about the war in Gaza. Anybody who demonstrates against the war in Gaza is being arrested after 5 minutes in Israel. Any lecturer in the university that talks against the war in Gaza would find himself suspended. This is a new era in the way of Israel. I thought that I saw it all, but it doesn't compare to even what I went through, and I went through quite a lot. What they're going through is unbelievable. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be arrested for any questioning of the Israeli policies in Gaza in terms of what the Israelis are doing to Gaza. You can questioning whether the army should continue or should go to the north. These are legitimate questions the Israelis asking. But there is an implosion of the Israeli society from within. There are two camps. There is the secular Israelis, if you want to call it the state of Tel Aviv, the state of Israel, the old Israel, whatever you want to call it, that thinks that you can be a liberal apartheid state. And there is the new Judea state, the theocratic apartheid state, that sees the liberal Israelis as sinners and as the enemy as much as they see the Palestinians. And there's no common basis. Even the way they were horrified by what happened in 7th of October did not manage to keep them together, which is incredible. You would have thought, that they said it was the second Holocaust. And yet that allegedly second Holocaust and 7th of October did not keep the people together. So I'm totally convinced that this idea that Judaism as a faith can be a basis for a national identity is not working. And I don't know if you know the numbers, but almost 500,000 Israelis already left after the 7th of October. 500,000. This is the end of one particular group of Israelis that established the state, built its cultural system. They're going out. They're going out. They're not going to be here in the next 10 or 15 years. So that's one collapse. The second one is economically, Israel is not anymore doesn't have a viable economy anymore. It needs huge support from the United States. I'm not sure even the Republicans will be able to give that kind of money that Israel needs in the future. The military has proved is unable to defend the Israelis. The Jewish world has disassociated itself its younger generation, disassociated itself from Israel. The international isolation is growing. What is really missing is a Palestinian movement that knows what it wants. We don't have that, unfortunately. And that, I think, slows down the collapse. The fact that there is no real Palestinian national movement with a clear vision and a message. That the moment there will be, and I think there will be, I'm optimistic, there will be a consensual Palestinian suggestion what should replace Israel, I think that would accelerate the collapse and the change, and would also make sure that the transition would be to something much better. So there are these indicators. It's like a house that had the cracks in it, and the 7th of October was like an earthquake that widened the cracks significantly, to the point that I think and that's the point I'm making, whether you are afraid of the end of Israel, whether you are wishing for the end of Israel, you have to talk about it. But what do the politicians of the world do in the West? They talk about the two-state solution, as if this is now the issue. Where will be the border between Israel and a mini Palestine? This is an irrelevant conversation anymore. It's not a relevant conversation anymore. The only conversation which is relevant is, can we make sure that what happened in Syria is not going to happen in Israel? That what is going on in Lebanon would not happen in Palestine. It's not just Israel and Palestine that are collapsing as nation states. Libya doesn't exist anymore. Yemen doesn't exist anymore. Syria doesn't exist anymore.